24, and we have two presenters of Article 24, Mrs. Janice Griffith and Mr. Glenn Nice. Article 24 deals with inclusion.
Good afternoon.
Just a moment for the sign language interpreter.
Oh, no problem. Good afternoon once again. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you. I'm speaking to Article 24, Education. I have a quote by Nelson Mandela. He says, "To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity." Persons with disabilities, when you're born into a country, they're citizens of that country and automatically should inherit the rights of that country. Right? So you are entitled to a free education. The article spoke about the rights of education for persons with disabilities, free, inclusive primary and secondary education, training in life skills and social development, employing of trained personnel, access to tertiary, vocational and adult education, and lifelong learning. However, today, our system is not in line with what we have here in Article 24. What is inclusion? Inclusion is an educational approach and philosophy that provides all students with community membership and greater opportunity for academic and social achievement. Inclusion seeks to maximize the potential of all students. It involves teaching strategies that reach diverse learners as individual learners. It's a provision for appropriate individualized support and services to all students. Teachers in inclusive classrooms vary their styles to enhance learning of all students. Inclusion doesn't separate persons with disabilities or against persons without. What we're saying here is that we want the peers, persons with disabilities, to be educated among their peers in the same classroom. However, they will need the services and support that will help balance the situation. Okay? Services that we require are like speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, behavioral therapy. Okay? So what are some barriers to inclusion? We have prejudice. We have non-acceptance of students at schools. This is very, a lot of parents complain of this. They go to the primary school, they let the principal know, okay, my child has autism. They said, oh, we're sorry, we can't accommodate you. I had an experience when it was time for my son to go to primary school. I started searching for schools. I was unable to find schools that cater for persons with autism. And there was one government special school that caters for varying disabilities. I was fortunate he got into that school. But there are parents today who have to keep their children home because the teachers are not trained in special needs education to cater for persons with disabilities. We have lack of qualified aides. Yes, we have student support. Student support provide aides. But some of these aides are not qualified. They have not done training to any specific disability the children they're helping. So we need aides who are qualified, who understand the disability, who understand the characteristics of the child and know how the child learns. We have limited resources. There's no finances to put things in place for students with disabilities. There's a lack of technology-driven teaching. Persons with autism and some other developmental disabilities require visual aids in their learning. Assistive technology provides that opportunity for them to be participatory in their education. We need social workers. There are a lack of social workers. We have one social worker assigned to many schools. So they probably come to school once a week. That is not sufficient. We need them there daily. Right. What are some solutions? We must enact legislation to ensure that our children with special needs are given their right to a free education. We must have family, school, and community dynamics. The family provides information to the school about their child because they know who their child is. The school works with the family to assist in their education. And then the community, we have them involved in community so the community can understand and accept persons with disability as part of the community in which they live. Right? There must be assessment and early intervention. Without the proper assessment, we will not be able to identify what the shortcomings are, and therefore we will not be able to implement the technology and the services that they require. We need a restructuring of the educational system. We need to look at the curriculum. It cannot only be academically driven. We have to look at, we are varied people, we are a diverse community. People are interested in music and art. We need to cater for that. In curriculum, we also need to look at life skills training, okay, social training. We need to provide universal design for any schools that are built, and we need to revamp the existing infrastructure. Universal design caters for all. It is not a thought after. When we're planning in mind that we have different people. So we need to ensure that this door is wide enough to cater for persons with wheelchairs. We need, as we're talking about the pavements, we cannot expect to have high pavements and persons with wheelchair, or even if you're walking with a crutch or something, you cannot access it. So it is done in such a way that makes it easier for everyone to use it. We need to have classrooms that are driven with technology. We are into the technological age. We cannot still be using chalk and chalk or whiteboard and markers. We need to use technology. We also need to have the universal design for learning. It caters for all students. Students learn differently. So when we are using universal design technique, we cater for the auditory person, we cater for the visionary person, we cater for the tactile, the kinesthetics. We have to involve all aspects to ensure that each person can access quality education. What about those who are unable to access or to survive in the general ed setting? We need to provide somewhere for them to go. We need to have either day centers where they can learn probably just life skills, how to be independent. We need to provide vocational learning centers. An example of a vocational learning center is NCPD, National Center for Persons with Disability. This can be used as a carbon copy for others, for the government to follow. They cater for different persons with disability. And most importantly, we must involve the persons with disability in decision making, right, and society. Parents, it's important that you become the advocate for your child. You have to be the voice. You know their needs. If you don't stand up and say, this is the right of my child needs this to survive, then no one will pay attention. Okay? So therefore, I am saying that we also need to come together as one. So I say, together, everyone achieves more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Griffith, for keeping within the time. And we move on to Mr. Niles from the Down Syndrome Family Network, also speaking on the whole Article 24 inclusion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jean, thank you very much for notes for hosting this. It's a Saturday, so I know thank everybody for coming out. Saturday is like my chores, laundry, shopping, everything day, so it's hard to give up that whole day, you know, to come out here, so this is good. Sorry Suniti isn't here to see the people who stayed who have the vested interests that she spoke about, right? Now, you heard a lot of the presenters before. We've had a lot of forums like this before. There have been a lot of papers written, a lot of other conferences and symposiums, and yet it's difficult for us to continuously move forward. And we have to try and figure out why that is. So Article 24, education, and we're looking at inclusion. What is inclusion? Now, we just went through a little breakdown of inclusion, but then it goes a little further. Because before there is actual full inclusion, there has to be integration, where you have a little mix. And then mainstreaming, when you put a little more into the mix. And then full inclusion. And this is where we have the problem. Because a lot of people use the word inclusion all the time. It's a very popular word right now. Everybody is talking about inclusion. But there is no inclusion, one, because there is no integration in the first place. There's still a slight separation. And Alison Franco was here recently, the human rights lawyer. She kind of defined it by talking about the two different models when you look at services for persons with disabilities. There's the social model and the charity model. So the social model is with inclusion, where persons with disabilities are seen to be part of society. But the charity model, on the other hand, is where we take care of the people with disabilities. You know, it's nice to build a nice little center for persons with disabilities and put them there. Build a nice little school for persons with disabilities and put them there, instead of them being integrated into the wider society. Now, we have a lot of schools of thought on the integration of children with disabilities in schools, in the primary school, in the secondary school sector, because we have to go there first before we could even think of them reaching UE. Because if they don't go through that system, they will never reach here. So there's a lot of schools of thought. You know, people, some parents actually say, you can't send out children there, they will be bullied. A lot of children are bullied who don't have disabilities. What we have to do is put processes in place to stop the bullying in schools. Go back to before, see what practices, review the systems. There are schools that don't have bullies. Why? So we have to look at that and say, put systems in place to actually stop it. But you cannot say, don't send the kids, they will get bullied. Don't send the kids, they will fall behind. We have just outlined on a whole educational process that will prevent them from falling behind. But you see, what people keep coming up with is excuses. They don't look at the solutions. And what we have to do here, this is why I hope that you all stayed back here for this purpose, after hearing all of this, is to look at solutions for inclusion and no more excuses. Because, oh, you will get a realm of excuses. I mean, I hear it all the time. And it's kind of difficult for every time you try to come up with something that you see being practiced in the developing countries, that you see being successful in the developing countries, and yet people are saying it cannot work here. What is making us different? What is really causing it not to work? It has to be us, right? We are not making it work because we don't have the will. The Constitution, as Rhea Davidson said, the CRPD doesn't introduce any new laws, any new rights, rather, for persons with disabilities. It's the same rights that is written in our Constitution. So, every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago has the right to an education without discrimination. It's on our constitution, so that includes persons with disabilities. So if your child cannot get into a school, they are being denied their right as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's up to us to fight for their rights. If we don't do that, they have no future. That is basic, that is ground level. Now a lot of people say, oh, don't worry, it have time. You know, we'll get it right in time. But I always say I have no time. I don't know the last time they prayed and they spoke to their God. And he said, nah, you're good. You have the next 50 years. I have you covered. But I never get that kind of response. So my son will be 18 in December. He wants a whole lot of things that right now he is unable to even think about achieving and getting the opportunity to achieve. And if I don't use my voice for him and fight for his rights, he will never achieve those things. So we have to push now. So as parents, if you're not a parent, I hope you become an advocate. For us to look at different ways how we could make things inclusive. I heard Sarah speak about the new mass, but there's only one thing I had to tell you. You said it's inclusive for all persons with disabilities. You're going real good until you say for all persons with disabilities. It should be inclusive for all persons. Everyone. Yeah, make it an inclusive. Let the other people, like I want to go to a shorter mass. Exactly. That sounds like the perfect mass for me. You know? I could come and relax and look at the time and enjoy my worship and get out, you know. But that is the whole thing. Integration. We say, okay, we cannot send our children to the school. Now, we need special schools because there are some children that cannot be integrated. We understand that. But we also need some kind of assessment procedure where the kids who can be integrated can be assessed early enough so we could find out exactly where they are on the spectrum and allow them to be integrated. So those are the things that we have to do, look for the solutions. So even with the special schools that we have, where the kids have to go to the special schools, how can we help them be integrated? We can write to the other schools, children without disabilities, and allow them to come to that school and spend a day. You know, like 10 kids come from that school, come to the special school and spend a day with these kids. You see, inclusion benefits everyone, not only the children with disabilities. You also will engender a more caring society by persons getting to meet and interact with other persons with disabilities from a young age. Children are a lot more accepting than adults. Yeah, we are the ones with all the hang-ups, and we are the ones who start to discriminate. We are the ones who see color and gender and create barriers. Children don't. They are a lot more accepting, so that is where we have to start. So we see there